Martio here, and welcome to Picks and Mix. Well, we mix everything up and have a different thing every week on this part of the week. And today is mixing it up, which means we look at a producer. Now, this is a producer that a couple of you have asked for, and it is Phil Spector. Now, Phil Spector, of course, little bit controversial what he did towards the end of his life, but we've got to remember, his contribution to music is huge. He wasn't just a producer, of course. He was a songwriter, and he wrote quite a lot of songs on his album, but he's best known for that innovative recording practices, and that this wall of sound, which is a production style that was characterised for its diffusion of two-tone colours, dense orchestral sound, which described as a Wagnerian approach to rock and roll. Very influential producer through the 60s. In the 70s he did a lot of work with the Beatles and some of the solo stuff. He's worked with the Righteous Brothers, Leonard Cohen, Dion, Ramones, even towards the end of his producing career. So lots to go through, so we'll have a look at that. I'm not going to touch on his convictions, because I'm not interested in that today. I'm interested in just Phil Spector, the producer. Although he's done the odd track on some, and he's co-produced and executive producer, I'm just concentrating on the ones that he actually gets a credit. I think I've got them all, but I'm sure people out there will remind me if I haven't. So it all started in 1959, and the first album that he produced was the Teddy Bears and the Teddy Bears Sing, way back in 1959. Not much on that one that we remember, but in 1962 he produced his first album for the Crystals, Twist Uptown, which has got tracks on there. There's No Other Way, like My Baby, and Oh Yeah, Maybe Baby. Big top 20 hit in the 60s. Also Uptown, What a Nice Way to Turn 17 got to number 13. 1963 then, another album for the Crystals, He's a Rebel, which was produced the number one hit, He's a Rebel, I Love You Eddie. 63 again, he did an album with Bebop, Soxx and the Blue Jeans called Zippity-Doo-Dah. And then in Christmas 1963, a Christmas gift for you. The songs that various artists that he produced, and they put out a Christmas album. Very festive. 1966, the next time he really did, because he did a lot of singles in between 63 and 66. But in 1966 he produced this great album, River Deep Mountain High, for Ike and Tina Turner. He was not just the producer, he composed some of the songs on it. Got the brilliant River Deep Mountain High, A Love Like Yours Don't Come Knocking Every Day. Then in 1969, again he produced and composed some of the songs on this album by Sonny Charles and the Checkmates Limited. Love Is All We Have to Give, Black Pearl. Then 1970 he started working with the Beatles, and he was involved with although produced by George Martin, Phil Spector came and had his bits on Let It Be. Great stuff. Also in 1970 he was co-producer with George Harrison on All Things Must Pass. Then he went to another Beatle, John Lennon, and he would produce John Lennon Plastic Ono Band, which has got Working Class Hero and Isolation on it. Great tracks. 1971, he went and did some more work with John Lennon on the co-produced Imagine, which has famously got Imagine and Jealous Guy on, of course. 1971 again, he produced a live album with George Harrison for the concert for Bangladesh. 72, he's still doing some work with the Beatles. This time he's going to work with John, and it's on the 1972 album Sometime in New York. Really, my favourite song on there is New York City. 1975, again co-produced with John Lennon on the Rock and Roll album, which produced Stand By Me on it. 1975, he goes and works with someone else, another big singer from the 60s, Dion, and the album Born to Be With You. He was a producer and played guitar on it, and he wrote some songs on it as well. 1977 next up, for the death of a ladies' man, Lennon Cohen. Not my sort of cup of tea, but there we go. Then in 1980, he really did something which no one expected. He produced the End of the Century's album for the Ramones, which is a great album. Got some great tracks on there. Do You Remember Rock and Roll and Baby I Love You from the Ronettes. Then in 1981, he went and worked with Yoko Ono on the Scenes of Glass. Never heard it, don't want to, because it's not my cup of tea. 1986, he worked on a posthumous album, John Lennon's Men Love Avenue. Then 1991, he produced this box set of various artists that he'd worked through the 60s, and it's called Back to Mono, 1958 to 1969. It's a really good box set. And then in 2003, hadn't done much for a long time, and he comes up and just co-producing on Silence is Easy for Star Sailor. So that's some of his notable stuff. So what's my top 5 albums by Phil Spector? So number 5 for me was the 5th album by the Ramones, called End of the Century. It was released in 1980, 4th February. It was the first of the bands to be produced by Phil Spector, though he'd offered to work with the band earlier. So on here we've got Joey Ramone, Johnny Ramone, Dee-Dee Ramone and Marky Ramone. Tracks on here are great. Do You Remember Rock and Roll Radio? What a track this is. Love this song. And it's certainly got that Phil Spector feel about it. Then there was I'm Affected. Danny Seb's just a punky, great punk song, very quirky. Chinese Rock, one of my favourite tracks on this album. Just love the guitar work. Return of Jackie and Judy. Let's Go. Baby I Love You. Great cover of the Ronettes, but having Phil there to produce it, it gives it that edge. It's a little bit different, but definitely a lot of Phil on there. I can only make it on time. Good old fashioned track. This ain't a Havana, rock and roll whole school, all the way, high risk insurance. Just good old fashioned Ramones album, defined by Phil Spector. Lots of traits of Phil Spector on this. Really good. My number 4 is River Deep, Mountain High, 1966. Tina Turner vocals, Barney Kessel, Don Peake, John Irwin, Robert Gulster, Ike Turner do the guitars, string bass, Jimmy Bond, Carol Kay, Phil Folman, Liz Ritz on the Fender bass, drums, loads of people, Jim Gordon, Earl Palmer, Howard Batiste, Larry Ketchnell from Bread, Gets About, Ike Turner on the piano. Opens up with their classic River Deep Mountain High. Love this song. He wrote this as well. Definitely got that wall of sound on it. That orchestral, wonderful track. I Idolise You. Again, really, really strong track. A Love Is Like Yours, Don't Come Knocking Every Day, really good track. A Fool in Love, great stuff. Make 'Em Wait, great track. Hold On Baby, love this track, one of my favourites off this album. Save the Last Dance for me. I don't know why they did a Drifters song, but I don't think it worked. Oh Baby, Every Day I Have to Cry, Such a Fool, It's Gonna Work Out Fine, and You're So Fine. Great vocal from Tina. Classic album from the 60s. Definitely got that wall of sound feel to it. Brilliant album. My number 3 is from 71. It's Imagine, the second album by John Lennon. It's got John Lennon's on here. George Harrison plays on here as well. Lots of people on this. Nicky Hopkins, of course. Opens up with Imagine. I've talked about that so many times. Crippled Inside. Love this tune. One of my favourites on the album. Jealous Guy. Classic song. But as I've said before, I do prefer Roxy Music's version. It's So Hard. I like that song. And then we got I Don't Want to Be Soldier. It's an alright track. Give Me the Truth, typical John Lennon song. Oh My Love, something that the Beatles could have done. How Do You Sleep, great little rocker. And How and Oh Yoko. Great album. Got some really good tracks on one of his better albums. Okay, number 2 for me is Let It Be. Though he didn't have so much, he sort of helped with the production on this. Some great tracks on here, of course. And got some bad ones. Two of Us, bit of a nonsense track. Dig a Pony, the only thing on there I like is the solo. Across the Universe, a wonderful song. I'll Be Mine, it's okay. Excellent guitar work from George Harrison on that though. Dig It, pointless track. Let It Be, beautiful song. What more can you say? Then we get that little traditional Maggie May thing, it's alright. I've Got a Feeling, great track. One of the best ones on here. One After 909, yeah. The Long Winding Road, another of those great tracks. For You, Blue, quirky song, and then the classic Get Back. Great track album. But the one that really does it for me, my number 1 favourite album by Phil Spector. We've featured it on a classic album already, and it's George Harrison's All Things Must Pass. Loads of people on here. Notably Ringo Starr, Billy Preston, Eric Clapton, Alan White, Peter Frampton, Tony Ashton, Gary Brooker's on here, Ginger Baker, hand claps from John and Yoko. Phil Collins did some of the sessions, but they never used his stuff. Tracks on here, of course, of I've Had You Anytime, great track from Bob Dylan. My Sweet Lord, which is absolutely brilliant. Wah Wah, So Much Sgt. Pepper's on that. Isn't It a Pity, version 1. You forget how the influence that George did have on the Beatles. What Is Life, brilliant track. If Not For You, another sort of song written by Dylan. Behind That Locked Door, great little bass line on that. Let It Down, great track, very progressive. Run of the Mill, lovely acoustic work on that. Beware of the Darkness, another great song. Apple Scruffs, chill track as I call it. The Ballad of Frankie Crisp, again another chill track. Awaiting All For You, upbeat track. All Things Must Pass, brilliant. I Dig Love, brilliant song. Art of Dying, Isn't There a Pity version 2, more stripped down. Hear Me Lord, second favourite track on the album. Brilliant stuff. Out of the Blue, really rocks. Brilliant little jam that is. It's Johnny's Birthday, 49 Seconds of Weirdness. Plug Me In, great. I Remember Jeep, bit of bluesy. Lots of claps from John Lennon and Yoko on that. And then Thanks for Pepperoni, just a great track. Brilliant album. You've got the rockers, the chills, the hippie stuff. Best thing that Phil Spector was involved with. So there we go, a short, brief history of Phil Spector to finish today. Don't forget tonight it is live stream at 8 p.m. And then tomorrow, Super Friday tomorrow. First we kick off with a live album ranking of one of my favourite singers of all time, Mr. Paul Rodgers. Looking at his solo live albums. 2 new album reviews tomorrow. We've got 1 and 2 by John Frusciante, from the guitarist from Red Hot Chili Peppers, and a former member of Velvet Underground, John Cale, and his new album Mercy. So that's what's coming tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody, and I will see you all tomorrow, or tonight if you join us at 8 p.m. Bye for now.